So thanks to everyone's support, we're getting really close to hitting 1,000 members of this community. So for that, I figured I'd have a special Q&A style video to celebrate. So if you have any questions for me, leave them down below in the comments and I'll answer them in the 1,000 sub special. Now, on to the video. So we all know about the Foretellers, the students of the Master of Masters that eventually went on to become the original Union leaders of Union Cross. They're definitely no stranger to the channel, as I've talked about them multiple times in multiple videos. I know that compared to characters like the Master of Masters, Luxu, Yozora, Darkness, and other characters, they're not exactly high up on the list of characters to sort of look at and keep an eye on compared to the others. But personally, I don't see why that is. As students of the Master of Masters, they definitely have the potential to affect the narrative and change the story in a big way based on what they do and how they end up interacting with our main cast. And honestly, while other characters have the potential to do the same while garnering more attention, I think the Foretellers could also definitely shake up things if they wanted to. And that's exactly what I want to talk about today, because we got introduced to some new concepts and new terminology in the most recent Union Cross update that could actually have a lot to do with the Foretellers. And this could definitely have huge implications when it comes to Kingdom Hearts going forward into Phase 2. But with that being said, let's get into it. So, in the epilogue of Kingdom Hearts 3, we got one of the most iconic reveals in Kingdom Hearts series to date in finding out that Luxu, the student that the Master of Masters entrusted with the Black Box and the Gazing Eye Keyblade, was actually Xigbar the whole time. And while that is a great reveal, another key moment in that scene is that Ira, Ced, Gula, and Envy, 4 out of the 5 Foretellers, are now in the current timeline. The only one missing is Ava, which we'll talk about in a bit. Now, the reason I bring this up is because in Kingdom Hearts Key, we see the Foretellers take part in the Keyblade War. You end up fighting all of them as the player before they just kinda Superman out of the scene and are never heard from again. Now, since the epilogue released with Kingdom Hearts 3, I've been seeing a lot of theories on where the Foretellers could have gone and what could have happened to them after the Keyblade War. And since Melody of Memory introduced Quadratum and the Universe of Unreality, people have been theorizing that the Foretellers could have went to Quadratum after the Keyblade War. But something happened in the Union Cross update that makes me think otherwise. So in the recent Union Cross update, the Master of Masters said that in order to time travel, you need some sort of medium that can reconstruct your body and someone with memories of you to travel through time. In the case of the Master of Masters, Luxu has memories of the Master and has the Gazing Eye Keyblade, which has the Master's eye, which he can use to reconstruct himself. But since we know the Foretellers ended up in the present, it could be possible that instead of hopping back and forth between Quadratum, I think it's not entirely out of the realm of possibility to say that they actually could have come straight to this timeline after the war. Luxu has the memories of the Foretellers and the Black Box could possibly have some sort of medium to reconstruct their body. And since we don't know where they went or exactly what they did, I think it's possible that they could have traveled through time going from a time shortly after the Keyblade War to the epilogue of Kingdom Hearts 3. And another concept that got introduced in Union Cross's recent update is the idea of the 7 crowns. We don't know what they are yet, but I think I can take a pretty good guess as to what they are and what they do. Because a crown is a symbol of a right to rule over something. It's an object that gives you power over something that you now control. So when it comes to the 7 crowns, the Master of Masters says they're for the 7 lights, but even he doesn't know who they're going to end up being used by. Now, the fact that he says the 7 crowns are for the 7 lights means that he could be talking about the 7 princesses of heart, but the fact that they could end up being used by someone else means that they either aren't referring to the princesses of heart, or the princesses have the power to willingly pass on the powers of the 7 crowns to someone else. And for the sake of this theory, we're going to explore the former rather than the latter. Now, in the recent Union Cross update, it got confirmed that the entity known as Darkness runs on some sort of hive mind. That means that out there somewhere is some sort of entity that Darkness spawns from, and once that happens, they can form wills and become independent. And when it comes to the 7 crowns, I think the 7 crowns could be some sort of way to keep that darkness in line. Just like there are beings of pure light and beings of pure darkness, the 7 crowns could be a natural occurrence, or maybe something that's been created by Kingdom Hearts, to make sure that the place that this darkness comes from never oversteps its boundaries. The 7 crowns could exist to maintain balance. Now, I'm sure you're all wondering, how does all of this relate to Master Ava? Well, here's how. So you know how Ava was the only one who was absent in the epilogue? Well, what if while the Foretellers traveled straight to the future to meet Luxu in the epilogue of Kingdom Hearts 3, Ava actually stopped in a time before that to take over her own mission to find the 7 crowns? The reason I bring up the Foretellers returning in the epilogue is because that if Luxu has the memories of the Foretellers that they would need to time travel, the box could contain some sort of medium for them to reconstruct their bodies. And since the box contains some sort of medium and you seem to need to be near that medium to be reconstructed, she could have talked to Luxu, and that's why he seems to know where she is and what she's doing. And at this point, we know that going off on her own to see to her own agenda isn't something that's necessarily new to Ava. When she learned about Luxu's plan, she openly fought against him and essentially started the Keyblade War. And let's not forget that she also chose to give Brain the Book of Prophecies and have him become the virus in the Master of Masters' plan for the future. It's possible that instead of aiding her fellow foretellers, she's looking for the Seven Crowns as her final act of rebellion against the Master of Masters' plans. Because we don't know what the endgame is for the Master of Masters, but considering he only came to Daybreak Town to raise Keyblade wielders and then let it be destroyed, could mean that his grand plan could involve a lot of destruction and suffering to get to his end goal. Ava could be carrying out her own mission to find the Seven Crowns and trying to make sure that they get into the hands of good Keyblade wielders so that they can defeat the darkness but without any unnecessary death or destruction. Now, I could definitely see them going this route for a couple of reasons, because we know that the foretellers are going to be our enemies in the future, and that's because of the chessboard we saw in Kingdom Hearts 3. But when you look at it, it doesn't look like Ava is there, or if her piece is on there, the game definitely kept it ambiguous at best. With Ava talking to Luxu and giving the Book of Prophecies to Brain, Ava definitely is one of the foretellers where at this point we don't really know where her allegiance lies. So given her history, I don't think it would be so far-fetched that she would end up going down her own path and started searching for the Seven Crowns for her own reasons. But if the foretellers do come face to face with our protagonist, it could be Ava that comes back and mends the gap between them while telling us what Luxu told her and what she plans to do to change the future. I think that would be an interesting way to not only introduce the conflict between the foretellers and our Guardians of Light, but also finding out what happened to Ava and where we could end up going with that storyline. Also, I think it'd just be really cool to have a foreteller on our side as well if we do end up going against the rest of them and the Master of Masters. And even with Luxu telling the foretellers that Ava had her own mission that she carried out in the epilogue, he could actually not be referring to her role that the Master gave her, but the role that she took upon herself to stop the Master of Masters from causing unnecessary destruction as he carries out his plan. But what do you guys think? Do you think it's possible that Ava is out looking for the Seven Crowns, or do you think there's another reason she's missing? Let me know down below in the comments. Also, don't forget to leave a question if you want to be featured in the 1000 sub special that's coming up here soon. And finally, if you enjoy JRPG content like Kingdom Hearts and Persona, make sure you subscribe and turn notifications on. But that's going to be all from me today, so this is Moose Wayne, signing off.